it, right? You even did a fade. That was awesome, Tom. That was so nice. How are we doing tonight, guys? Oh, listen to that crowd. Make some noise. Very good. My name is Gareth Evans. I'm the Assistant Festival Director of the Tall Sound Summer Concert Series. I'm very excited to introduce two of my new friends to have a conversation about the history of Cajun music. We've got Tom Turino, Louis Michot. We wouldn't be here without the South Arts grant. This performance is funded in part by a grant from South Arts in partnership with the National Endowment for the Arts and Lex Arts. And Tall Sound is super excited to present it. So for those of you in the audience, there's so many of you, make some more noise. Yeah. And for those of you at home watching, please enjoy this conversation. I'm going to get out of the way and let you all start talking. Thank you, gentlemen. Have a good one.
Thank you, Gareth.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much. So many people came. It's great. So our purpose, I guess, is we're going to talk through a little bit of history of Cajun music, and I thought I'd get Louis to start off by talking about instrumentation. We have some musical examples. If you could just tell me, I'll be your DJ here, and maybe start in the beginning. I don't know, just a little bit of historical background. Cajun people came from Arcadia, which is Nova Scotia. They were expelled by the British in 1755. Took 10 years floating around, and pretty dire circumstances too before they land in Louisiana, in the Bayou region, and then later. I guess I just want to mention this because everybody has this image of where Cajun people lived. They also spread out to the prairies to the west, and out there is a lot of where accordion music and Cajun music comes from. But maybe, if I don't know, talk about the history of the instrumentation. And
yeah, that's a great place to start. I mean, you know, obviously the word Cajun does come from Acadian, and like you said, they arrived in 1765 when the Acadian chiefs of the Acadian tribes, as they kind of call them, kind of like clans or tribes, would they were some of the first non-Europeans. They were from Europe, but to distinguish themselves as non-Europeans by calling themselves Acadians, because they arrived in Nova Scotia in the early mid-1600s, very tied with the Mi'kmaq native culture there. And then they've done genetic research where some of the Mi'kmaq genetics actually, you know, of course, a lot of Viking, you know, Mi'kmaq, Acadian. So a very interesting cultural, you know, crossover that happened there. And the Acadian culture up in Canada became one of the most prolific agriculture in the New World, which is why the British decided to throw them out and take their land. And it was a devastating expulsion and a bit of a attempted genocide or something like that to take the land. And yeah, like you said, they floated around for 10 years and couldn't really land anywhere and stay in just awful conditions. And a third of them died, a third of them hid out in the woods, and a third of them made it to Louisiana. And they were, well, they made a deal, the chiefs, the Acadian chiefs made a deal with the Spanish government because they were very prolific farmers, very prolific family makers, if you will, and reproducers. And they got these big, giant Spanish land grants and cattle, and they settled the Attakapaw region, of which we now call Acadiana. And that began the beginning of that. Beausoleil Broussard, who was like Beyonce, is a descendant of that. I'm a descendant. That's my only Cajun part, is a little bit of Broussard. And they were the militia leaders they were the ones that stayed and fought the British and then came down. But that's a main part of the cultural identity. And then from there you have so many others, like Michot, for example. My last name is Creole French. Went through Haiti to Louisiana, and then the Haitian Revolution, 40 years after the Acadians arrived in Louisiana, tripled the population of New Orleans, and the highest the highest population of those people were free people of color. There was some, you know, European French Creole, like my people, and there was free people of color, and there were slaves. And, but the most of them were free people of color because it was a very complex society in Haiti, much as in Louisiana at the time. So they came, and then they spread out to the prairies, like the Michots did, a few generations later after living in the French Quarter. And then you have the German, and of course the accordion comes from Germany, but it was sold in the Jewish merchant stores. Mm-hmm. And then you have, the fiddle, they say, was the original Acadian instrument, and of course everyone plays fiddle, but there was some Scotch-Irish, like Dennis McGee, for example. Right. Native American, also Dennis McGee. Yeah. Spanish, and, just so many different cultures. African, obviously, a huge part of it, that came together to make the musics. And, we could speculate a bit, but definitely, Louisiana, Congo Square, New Orleans being the only place where slaves were allowed to play music in America, kept that music as a part of Louisiana music, and the rhythms made their way into what we call Cajun and Zydeco now, and the instrumentation came from the place I just said. So, yeah, it's a very interesting mix, and it's a completely American music.
Yeah. So the way the chronology goes, the standard one anyway, is that the Acadians come down, and for the first period, they really only have vocal music, and they're singing. And there's even, so Alan and John Lomax did recordings in the region in 1930, I think. Mm-hmm. And there's a ballad on there about this migration and being on the ship. And in fact, it includes a line about cannibalism.
Is that Saison sur Masse?
I can't remember the title of the tune. 10 Years at Sea, I think.
Yeah, 10 ans sur Mer. That's I was sorry, what number?
Yeah.
10 Years at Sea, exactly.
Yeah. So, but anyway, vocal music. So those ballads.
The Hoffpower sisters.
Yes.
Exactly.
That ballad and ballads were sung, and then I think it's 1785. There's a mention of a fiddle and a clarinet.
Yep.
And so that's the first mention of fiddles there. But I would just throw in that in pioneer America, it was the fiddle everywhere. I mean, because it was small, it was easy to carry. And so that was true for the Cajun area as well. And they developed this twin fiddle tradition, which, can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. That's exactly right. I mean, the fiddle was the dominant instrument just until relatively recently, 100 and something years ago, when the accordion finally arrived. But before that, it was mostly a fiddle music. So the twin fiddles is you have the main fiddle playing the melody, and you have the second fiddle, which is called le second, kind of like second, and one of them is playing the low rhythm and one of them is playing the high melody, and they're just playing in complete unison. The Dennis McGee recordings luckily happened in like 28 or 29. Right, like the first Cajun recording was 1927 or 28, and 28. Joe Falcone and Cleoma Bro, and they luckily got that twin fiddling because it basically died out right after that, and so that's like a snapshot into the previous time, and they had triple fiddles as well in that recording, just such a whole different music. So when they added the accordion, or when the accordion became popular because it was rhythmic, loud. Exactly. But it also simplified and limited the music, because fiddles, of course, you can play any amount of tones on it. It's like a piano or accordion where you can play less, like 10 notes or something.
Yeah, 10 buttons.
10 buttons, and you can't play every note. And a fiddle, you can play every note and everything in between. So the fiddles were playing much more complex melodic structures. The accordion simplified, but made it much more a different kind of rhythmic attack.
Right. So accordions are invented in Vienna in 1822, I think, and it spreads like wildfire, actually around the world. Accordions, I used to call the accordion the musical weed, because it would go into places and it would rub out indigenous traditions. In Colombia, there were flute traditions. The accordion comes in and knocks them out.
Wow.
Same in Brazil, forró. But the accordion comes to the United States and becomes popularized in around 1850, something like that, and it becomes diffused in the Civil War, becomes diffused through minstrel shows, which were the main form of popular entertainment, which also had a lot of influence in Louisiana. And by the way, we got to get to percussion. The triangle was also used in minstrel shows, and accordions, these little button accordions, were used in minstrel shows too. But here's a question for you. So the accordion comes to Louisiana. People say what, between the Civil War period and the turn of the 20th century. But Marc Savoie, who's a famous accordion maker and player, says that the accordion was played pretty much by itself and not with fiddles until around the turn of the century, because the accordions that they were importing from Germany were in keys that the fiddles couldn't tune to. Have you heard this? And he names these keys. He names the key of A, which the cross key, which can also play E, and then B, which plays F sharp, and F sharp, and then what was the third one? G. So it would be G and D. And I don't know what the problem with G and D is for the fiddle.
It seems like a fiddle can tune anything.
Well, his claim was the strings. If his claim was that the fiddles were tuned in cross tuning, and they were used like a diatonic instrument. That's what he said. So
it'd be too low or too high.
Yeah, too low or too high. The strings would be too baggy or too tight, and they'd break. So his claim was that it's around 1900 where, when they import these Monarch and what's the other one? Sterling. These little black boxes that look exactly like contemporary Cajun accordions now. That's when the fiddle and the accordion come together in the kind of classic Cajun sound that we have now. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's I've never heard that theory that accordions only played alone. I never thought about it, never heard about it. Yeah, the Monarch and Sterling became we call them T-Noir, little black box, and they were, I think, Andre, we're doing another talk tomorrow about actually fiddles and accordions in a workshop, and my brother, Andre, is a accordion maker as well. He learned from Randy Falcon, who learned from Shine Mouton, who was the first one to dissect the accordion, because these were German-made accordions, Sterling and Monarch, and I wanted to say that maybe they were kind of the same thing, just with different names, like where they were sold, and they, like I said, they were sold at Jewish merchant stores mainly. There's Mervyn Kahn in Rain, in Rain, Louisiana, where I know they were sold. And during World War II,
were those stores like hardware stores?
Yeah, like department stores, and yeah, exactly. It was like, oh, bring, probably there's probably also like lap steels, which were popular, and who knows, guitars, ukuleles, I don't know, but
harmonicas.
Harmonicas. And so basically during World War II, the story I'm putting together in my mind, because Andre, my brother, is an accordion maker, and he's dissected accordion, and so the first story I heard from Ray Absher, who's Nathan Absher's adopted nephew, cousin, who we played with, and he said that in World War II, when a lot of the Louisiana musicians, Louisiana people got to Germany in the army, which of course was part of the revitalization of pride of Cajun culture, because before it was outlawed to speak French in the 20s. It was outlawed to speak anything but English in any school in America, right? My great-grandparents were teachers. They outlawed it, didn't teach my grandparents. It was their job. And they were part of the problem, if you will. But then my grandpa actually helped sign in Codafil, part of the solution, Council of Development of French in Louisiana. Anyway, side story. But when they got to the war, first of all, they were like, oh, French is actually useful. It's not a sign of being uneducated back. Yeah, it's actually, and so they got the best jobs, they got the best connections, the best food. Oh yeah, they said go that way. I'm gonna stay here and eat this, whatever. And then they ended up in Germany, and Ray Absher said that there were some of them, that he's heard stories of them walking through fields of, like when they bombed the ammunition factories, I'm thinking they switched the accordion factories to ammunition factories. Still, of course, they bombed, there was accordion pieces, but you couldn't pick it up and bring it home because that's not how war's supposed to work. So that's one thing. And then Andre, in changing reeds out and stuff, he found certain reeds with swastikas on them.
Wow.
And certain reeds with Stars of David. So I don't know if it was, of course there were Jews in Germany, which is why what was happening. Now, was it before and they were, Jewish, people of Jewish heritage who were fabricating accordions, or was it, within the concentration camps, did it turn into ammunition? Or something happened there, but there are reeds with swastikas and reeds with Stars of David.
Well, I never heard that.
Anyway, it's a little bit of a side tangent there.
But an interesting one,
yeah. So the accordion came, and then once we bombed the factories, we had to learn how to make them because they weren't made anymore. And, Germany. And so Sean Mouton dissected an accordion and figured out how to rebuild it. He taught Randy Falcon. Randy Falcon taught Andre. I think Mark learned from Sean Mouton as well, Mark Savoy. So anyway, it's become, it's still a very important piece of how we make the music. And Andre, the tuning process is a whole, as you know, you're an accordion player, right? So anyway, I forgot what the question was, but I'm talking about accordions.
It's interesting. You should know that Hohner, German companies, some Italian companies still make single row accordions, but they're not like Cajun accordions. Cajun accordions, and now the main place where they're made is down in Cajun country, and there's a lot of brilliant makers. And these things are really works of art now.
Yeah, I want to get one of Andre's. Andre has a few patents actually.
Huh.
He made one that it quiets the noise of the flaps, because when you press the buttons, the flaps open and close. There's 4 rows of reeds. There's almost 100 reeds in one accordion.
Yeah.
And then he made one that you close it and you pull a pin instead of having straps.
So you'll need to come tomorrow to the Tall Sounds show and come to that workshop. So we should have brought an instrument, but they're about this big, and they have 4 stops on the top because every button you push runs 4 reeds. So think of a harmonica. When you blow one hole, this has 4 of those, and so that's partly why they're so loud, and why the volume itself is one of the reasons they've become so popular for dance music the world over, particularly before PA systems.
Definitely.
And something else we might want to mention is why, and we should play an example for you to hear, an early example, why the singing style also is kind of the way it is. It's very high and it's very piercing, and part of the explanation for that, I think, and you can say what you think this is true or not, but it's really hard. I had to develop a whole different singing style just to sing over the damn thing. They're so loud. So you have to find your voice that you can get over the top.
Completely, yeah, completely. In my experience, and like I'm a more recent accordion player, my experience is that I was trying to sing in my high school rock bands and stuff, and I was like talking like this, I couldn't figure out how to sing. I was just like, whatever, it's a lost cause. And then I started playing fiddle. I was playing the family band. My brother and I grew up playing in Les Frères Michot. It's our family band. The Michot brothers, Les Frères Michot. My dad and 4 of his brothers at a time, so it was a 5-piece family band. And then we kind of would take their places as they would not be available, and I played stand-up bass, Andre played guitar, we both learned on triangle. Then a few years later, we picked up the lead instruments, I picked up the fiddle, and I actually went to Canada to learn French, because it was really hard to learn French at home. So I went to the University of St. Anne in Nova Scotia. It's like a 5-week program. And then I hitchhiked around Eastern Canada all the way to Quebec and Ontario, and I brought my grandpa's fiddle. I was just starting to mess around with it and learn French. I got home and Andre had picked up the accordion while I was gone, and we just started jamming, and we started the Lost Bayou Ramblers. It was 25 years ago this month.
Yeah, congratulations. Grammy Award winners, folks.
But all that to say that was starting to sing the songs, learning the French, learning to sing songs, and that high register, I finally figured out how to sing. I was like, oh, okay, I can do this. It kind of just forces you to get on that. It worked for me at least. But yeah, it's very, the fiddle is kind of the same too, where you got to be able to sing it, but accordion even more so. You start playing accordion, you really got to belt it out. And it's the same thing. It's to project. It's all about acoustic projection. And it's also, the one thing I love it's like a bunch of grown men crying. So.
Yeah. No, it is. It's very emotional.
Yes, definitely.
It is. And it's actually physically emotional to sing like that.
Definitely.
Like yodeling is like that too. I want to play a tune just so you get the sound in your ears. This is Dennis McGee and Amadi Adwan. And Amadi Adwan was an African-American accordion player. And a very important one. He was one of the guys who recorded early. So this recording is from the early 30s, but I think he was recording even before that. And he's playing with a guy named Dennis McGee, who you've already mentioned, who has that, what is it, Scotch-Irish.
Yeah, native Scotch-Irish and French, yep.
Background. So here's a case, and it's an interesting case where these two, a black man and a white man are playing music together. Which we don't see in popular culture until Stax Volt.
They were one of the first, if not the first, right?
Yeah, so it's really, it's kind of important. And you'll hear the singing style and this accordion style. And African Americans were really important in the development of Cajun accordion style. And so here is that. This is a blues number.
Yeah, Blues de Voyage, the traveling blues.
Oh, okay. It's going. The headphone's not going.
And so Dennis McGee, here we go, yeah.
You can hear the fiddle playing rhythm in the background.
Yes, accordion, exactly. It's all about the accordion. The fiddle's just right.
Bellow shake there. It's pretty cool.
It's so good.
One other thing to listen for is you've got that very low end. It's only 2 chords on this side of the accordion. Either one in a 4 chord or one in a 5 chord, depending. But it's creating this rhythm.
So good. I mean, that's the perfect example of everything that's in Cajun and Creole music. Because he's African American or whatever we call it, French Creole or whatever.
Yeah.
You know,
It's better.
African
French
Creole, whatever. You know, they call him the godfather of Zydeco, the grandfather of Zydeco, because Zydeco is the, you know, the African American version of the music, and Cajun is the Caucasian version of the music, if you will.
European, yeah.
Yeah, the European, and so, you know, Cajun music now is accordion and fiddle, and whatever other instruments, rock and roll or whatever, and Zydeco is accordion and no fiddle, and then you have Creole, which they're in the middle, so it's like accordion, fiddle, but kind of the washboard, the frottoir, and so that they're playing a blues. It's blues de voyage. It's improv. You know, he might have heard something from something else that inspired him, or mainly he's talking about his current experience of love. He is improvising. He's saying, you know, my people don't want me to leave you, but you won't allow me to stay because of how you're treating me. No one wants me around. I don't have any money. He's got the blues, you know. And so much of these songs were written on the spot. Some of them, you know, that's my best song, but some of them they're just like, this is what I'm feeling right now, and this is what I'm playing. In fact, the first Cajun recording ever, Alonzo Lafayette, he wasn't supposed to sing that. There was another guy who was supposed to sing. He got nervous, and Joe Falcon, they wrote it on the way there, and Joe Falcon had to sing it for the first time on the recording. We actually got to record the same song on the same exact microphone and system with Jack White. His guys had refurbished the, it wasn't Columbia, I forget. It was part of this thing called American Epic. Maybe it was Columbia. Yeah, it was Columbia that released the first. So it was redoing those songs on the same mic that Louis Armstrong made his first recording on, and the first Cajun recording with the amp. It was amazing. But yeah, so it's so much improvisation and current inspiration.
That's pretty cool. So, still staying on the instruments a little bit, the guitar comes in, box guitar, and then later what are called resonator guitars. They have that big cone in them, and they're kind of an internal amplifier. Again, it's all about volume. You're trying to get loud because as the places for it's dance music, and as more dancers come, I mean, they start off by doing house parties in small people's living rooms and stuff, but then it extends out to dance halls and to larger rooms, and then volume becomes a problem because you got a lot. Just even the feet dancing is a lot of noise. So you've got to do this. I should also mention one thing I meant to mention earlier. With this singing style, once microphones come in and once amplification comes in, you can change your singing style now. You can kind of sing more along the lines of what kind of mainstream popular music is, and that happened too, although some people keep belting it out in the old way. But the guitar comes in. My question, and I don't know, I wanted to ask if you knew when, so nowadays, okay, so first you got the fiddle and the accordion, then the guitar comes in, and you've got a triangle used for percussion, which was really important because that also cuts through in a dance circumstance. But when do the drums and the bass come in?
That's well, like you said, like that, so that was the accordion was just getting popular at this time, right? And that same fiddle player at the same time was recording the twin and triple fiddle music, so he was doing both things at once. Then the string band sound got popular. The, you know, Texas swing came notice. Then there's Cajun swing. So in just 5-10 years later, Harry Schultz, yep, exactly. Harry Schultz and the Hackberry Ramblers. Harry Schultz made Jolie Blanc in the national charts in French. It was the first and maybe only national chart song in Cajun French. And that's when the bass and the guitar joined in, was in the swing era. And in fact, the Hackberry Ramblers are supposedly the first ones to ever play on a PA. I don't know if that's in Louisiana or whatever. Like, they hooked up a public address system to a Model T Ford. Right. And when they sang through the microphone, they had the speaker on the other side of the room, and they say the word is all the ladies ran out the room because they heard a ghost, you know. So. But that's when they started playing guitars and basses. Then the accordion came back in more I mean, it never went anywhere, but it lost popularity to the swing music at the time.
They say between 35 and 45, and the people say that that the accordion goes out, and this kind of more Western swing, hillbilly music becomes popular, and Cajun string bands.
Yep.
But another instrument comes in and becomes really important in Cajun music, which is a lap steel.
Definitely.
And so they're all this, y'all know what a lap steel is? It's what's a lap steel, Chris? 6 strings on a board. It's electric.
A 2x4 with strings
and you
and a
use
pickup.
a slide to play. So it's sort of like pedal steel without the pedals.
Andre plays lap steel, so you can come see him tonight at the Green Lantern or tomorrow at Tall Sound. So.
Yeah. So the lap steel comes in, and so I guess a bigger point that's important is that just as country music and Western swing music influenced Cajun music from the 30s through World War II and beyond, in the 50s, rock and roll has the same exact trajectory. It comes in, and the music I was playing when you came in was a group, one of my favorite groups of all time, the Blue Runners, and they mix Cajun music and rock and roll, and a lot of people do. In fact, you guys do.
Yep.
You'll hear that. So the idea that the Cajuns were some kind of, we were talking about this earlier, but you want to speak about that also?
Yeah, well, a lot of people like to romanticize traditional culture and say, oh, well, it's, it exists in a vacuum or in a bubble. And when the reality is it's always being influenced by what's around it and influencing what's around it. And I mean, even like Cleoma Bro, and the first ones to record, she was doing some jazz standards in Cajun French, so it's definitely, it's always being influenced by what's around it, and that's how it stays relevant and stays current. And that's where tradition is born in my mind, is that tradition is just what was most popular. There wasn't like this, oh, this was the thing and it always existed. No, you lost a lot of great music because it didn't get popular enough or wasn't convenient enough.
We'll listen to, how do you pronounce his last name, Hebert?
Adam Hebert, yep.
Adam Hebert, and this is kind of a band. It's got accordion still in it, but influenced by country music.
Definitely, some honky tonk music right here. I forget who the accordion player was. Flabby recharge. A lot of that early Cajun rock and roll, the early Cajun with the rock and roll country influence, it's not like today where it's all boom, chick. It's like there's more, this is pretty straight, but a lot of it had more of like improv, just like come from the jazz, which was coming right down the street from New Orleans, right down the river. So, in fact, Ryan Brasso, what we were talking about, he was saying how the first drums in country music was actually a Cajun band. It was Leo Swallow, who was huge in, bringing modernizing Cajun music at the time, and he hugely influenced the Balfour Brothers and such. And he was like one of the first big professional musicians, moved from Ville Platte to Crowley and had his headquarters and played all these different bands and made a bunch of recordings. And he had, I forget his name, Joe Gonzalez or something, who had come from playing drums in New Orleans and joined his band. And it was the first drums in country music, as in, if you want to put Cajun music into a genre at the time, part of country music, it was the first drums in country music was a Cajun song.
Right, because you can't have drums on the Grand Ole Opry stage.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess one other theme we might bring up is so Cajun music. I think of Cajun music and Appalachian string band music as parallel in a bunch of different ways. Both are kind of locally grown, family grown. They're dance musics and they're porch or home musics. And they've been sustained over generations. That's still going on in eastern Kentucky, West Virginia, eastern Tennessee. And we have young people playing these things. Well, if you go to Cajun country now, one of the most beautiful things you'll see is these little kids. They've started programs to teach them the instruments, and these kids are good. I mean, they, you know, like I watch these little guys play accordion. I just want to put my accordion down. Forget it. I mean, they're so good. And that's also going on here. The young people are learning to play the old-time string band music, and certainly bluegrass. I mean, bluegrass is an extension of that old-time string band music, and both are going on at the same time. And so it's really interesting. And both attracted the attention of outsiders, folklorists, academics like me, and became interested in it because they were so unique. But beyond just their uniqueness, there was a vibrancy to them because they were still being passed down in contrast to sort of broad-scale commercial culture. So what were kind of pocketed musical styles, and there's pockets all over the United States, actually, of local musical traditions in the Southwest, in the northern Midwest, and so on and so forth. But these became really popular and really folklorists and academics became interested in them. So I already mentioned the Lomaxes, John Lomax and Alan Lomax, who you may have heard of. They were very famous music collectors, and Alan Lomax recorded the world was his goal. And they were in Louisiana in the 30s. They recorded all over the country. And then later, we're talking about Dewey Balfa, who's a fiddler and a really important figure in Cajun music. So we talked a little bit about prejudice against Cajun people. And so there was, if you want to acculturate and you want to move up in the social ladder, you put this away. And in fact, Cajun was a kind of slur, like hillbilly was a slur against these people. But the interest from the Lomaxes, and what happens in 1964, Dewey Balfa and two other people, I forget their names, they weren't Balfa brothers yet.
It was the Gladius Thibodeau,
okay,
and Dewey was a replacement. I forget who the other one, but Dewey was a last-minute replacement.
Huh. So the three go to Newport, and they're a big hit. And the two other guys think, oh, this is cool, and they go home, and nothing happens. Dewey thinks, this is cool, and he goes back and starts saying, you know, people really like this out there.
Yeah.
You know, this is really valuable. And they also had that, you talked about the World War II experience where they come back and they also find it valuable that we can speak French. And so there's a kind of new thing that happens in the 60s where all of a sudden there's a kind of cultural renaissance push from the inside as opposed to the outside. But the outside has influenced it. This happens all over the world, where if you know, what we used to, in ethnomusicology, we called it the Paul Simon effect. If Paul Simon comes in and records a Brazilian style of music, or records Ladysmith Black Mambazo from South Africa, all of a sudden those bands and those styles hit it big in the kind of cosmopolitan field. So a similar thing happens here, where you've got these outsiders digging this stuff. Not only that, but the Newport people also gave money for programs, like the incipient programs for language and music for kids to learn this stuff. So this is also a kind of an important thing, because now these guys are the new version of this. They're going all over the place, and they're playing this music and they're making it popular. Beausoleil did that in the 70s. Who's in the 80s? I guess Steve Riley. Who would you say in the 80s?
Yeah, still Beau Soleil, maybe.
Still Beau
Still Beau Soleil, maybe. Yeah, and Zach Richard doing his own thing. And
Yeah,
then
yeah,
same tribe, same crew, kind of split up. But yeah.
yeah.
And then like that's when my family band started in the mid '80s. I mean, they weren't like hugely popular, but they were doing it.
Yeah, yeah.
But they toured Poland and they toured Poland before the Iron Curtain came down.
Oh, wow.
And they did France and stuff, and they played the Smithsonian. But my family band was hugely inspired by the Balfour Brothers. In fact, Dewey Balfour played on their album, and because actually, my great-grandpa was in Mamou, where the Balfour Brothers are from, and my grandpa was raised in Mamou, but that's the thing. So the Balfour Brothers, like he was saying, they went to Newport Folk Festival, got a standing ovation for playing acoustic, but before that, they were playing Fender twin amps, drum sets, and honestly were idolizing Harry Schultz. They were watching Harry Schultz like, oh, this guy's amazing. And if you think about, and Harry Schultz was listening to Django Reinhardt and Stefan Grappelli. So they were playing, they were trying to do their own thing, like dance hall music, modern, like, amps and loud and blues and rock and roll and just all these things, all in the Cajun language and instrument frame. And then they went to Newport and they saw first of all, we all love to play, acoustic, and we all love to just get to the roots, but then it's also, you gotta do it bigger for a bigger crowd. Where at Newport, everyone's sitting there and listening, who are like the blues guys, oh, just play guitar. Where then they go back home, it's loud, it's right, they gotta crank it up a little bit. So they got to this listening audience, and he said, wow, that's, people respect it and understand. Yeah, you don't have to work so hard to try to get respect. And then he started the Balfour Brothers and went acoustic. So it's kind of like this inverse, and but I've heard similar things that happened in bluegrass, where it was, they were playing electric, and then they went, back to acoustic. Or like I've heard like the Bill Monroe thing, I've heard some stories about that. Before, he was playing louder electric. I don't know, but then it was more acoustic. Something to think about.
I don't know about that for Monroe. Anybody know about that? He had an accordion player earlier,
really?
But it was piano.
Yeah, So I mean, it's like, and that's a good thing. I mean, I think moving back towards getting to the roots of something is a good idea. But it's still, once again, it's a new evolution of something. You're going back, but you're also moving forward. Because what became the traditional fiddle licks that Dewey Balfour started teaching, started teaching nationally, and everyone learned from Dewey Balfour. They're actually Harry Schultz licks. And Harry Schultz was learning from Stefan Grappelli. So,
which came through Western Swing.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
So what people learn in the traditional fiddle camps is really, that's what I'm saying. What is tradition? It's what became popular. So what Dewey Balfour was teaching, and not that he was teaching the songs, but his signature licks came from Harry Schultz. And same with Canray Fontenot, the most influential Creole fiddle player, was also a huge fan of Harry Schultz because he was the man. He was out there just he was a genius. He was you listen to much Harry Schultz?
Yeah, a little bit.
So good. I mean, just like a virtuoso, just, the classic, just too good for his own good.
Well, you raise an interesting point. So that for a lot of people who think Cajun music is acoustic guitar, accordion, fiddle, triangle, maybe bass, as the kind of traditional band. But the length of time that unit existed was very short, and it was much earlier in the 20th century, and then it begins to evolve. But folkies always like that.
That's what my family band plays. Still to this day is fiddle, accordion, triangle, guitar, and acoustic bass. And there's almost no bands like that.
That's what my family band plays.
Really?
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, and I mean, there's like, it's almost an anomaly. It's almost like, wait, does this actually exist? I mean, to me, that's all I knew growing up, and I loved it. I loved playing stand-up bass and just getting real rhythmic and tuning into the triangle, learning triangle, and like, I mean, and people, oh, I want to play the triangle. You're going to mess the whole thing up. You got to learn, So that's like tuning into the triangle, tuning into the accordion, and then you're actually getting subtle and you're getting rhythmic, where that's how Lost Bayou Ramblers started, how we learned. But there was no other bands playing. Like every band had a drum set, a steel. If you didn't have a steel, you couldn't play a dance. You know, fiddle, electric bass. Almost nobody had a stand-up bass. So we were an anomaly. And then Lost Bayou Ramblers was an anomaly. But then slowly, our drummer, who was playing with the Blue Runners at the time, he started playing a stand-up kit with just a kick and a washboard, and then snare. And then we had stand-up bass for the first 15 years. And then finally, like one of the guys started playing electric guitar instead of acoustic. And the stand-up bass player left. We didn't have a bass for a while. Then finally, our producer started playing bass, electric. And now we have like samples and pads and all kind of, you know, just whatever we feel like doing, because it doesn't matter to us. Because if you unplug the sound system, you still get straight up Cajun music. If the power goes out, we keep playing, and what you hear is Cajun music. And you plug it back in, and you still hear Cajun music. You just hear some wild synths and pedals and whatever's going on, you know? So it's the same thing. So we started from that, you know, a very intentionally traditional bass with Louis Michot, and then we built on it from our side, but it's still the same thing, and we contribute our material just like Louis Michot did, and just like all these people have, and still influenced by modern music and whatever we like, so.
I'm wondering if you all have any questions or things you'd like to bring up. We can keep talking. I mean, you don't have to.
Yeah, we got a few minutes before I got to go sound check, I guess.
Yeah, no pressure, but I just thought I would ask, just in case you had a burning issue.
Well, I guess one thing I'll say too, if no one has any questions, is that when, like, say me, I mean, I was playing rock and roll guitar. My dad and them were playing. Oh, we need a bass player. Okay, come play. That's how I learned Cajun music. I didn't study. It was like, boom, you're in. You play music, get on the stage, learn it. Us, like me and Andre, and we kept going with the band. Anytime we get a new musician, we've never hired a Cajun musician. We just hire a friend who knows how to play music. Our entire band is Lafayette kids who grew up playing music like we all. You get into music, you're not necessarily going to get into traditional music. My 12-year-old is playing Black Sabbath. You know, my 15-year-old took his first accordion lesson at school. He was going to take bass, but the guy was like, oh, we need an accordion in the band. Same thing. We need an accordion band. Here's what he is. First time he got all pumped up. But Johnny Campos, a guitar player, is a very well-known, like, indie shoegazer, rock, whatever you call it. And Brian Weber plays, like, you know, hip-hop and jazz, and then Kirkland Middleton was playing. So they're all from Lafayette, but none of them played Cajun music until they played with us. Johnny Campos' first gig with us, we caught him the day before, and it was a 4-hour gig, and he'd never played with the band. We have a system where this is the A, that's the C, you know, and that's the G, whatever. It's like, follow the foot for 4 hours. And then you eventually, it's a language. You eventually start getting it. And that's the beauty of it. I mean, it's like, we're not necessarily trying to change music or affect music. It's just happening naturally. And I think that's really how it's going. You know, Dennis McGee was playing fiddle music, and then Amity Ardoin was, you know, hey, I don't know how it happened. So it's all organic.
Yeah. One question people always ask me, so I'll ask it for you, is the difference between Cajun and Zydeco, and we've touched on that a little bit, but instrumentation is different, as Louis said, but think of Zydeco. I mean, there are two kinds of Zydeco, actually, I think of. One is using these big piano accordions, and that's Clifton Chenier, and it's really, what that is a rhythm and blues band fronted by an accordion. That's how I think of it. But it's still considered Zydeco, and it's a really, it's a separate thing. Use horns, play in different keys than the Cajun music because of the fiddles and so on. The second kind of Zydeco music uses the single row button accordion that Cajun music uses. And here's the thing. So I was as an ethnomusicologist, I was an African music specialist, and most of sub-Saharan African music is based on a cycle. It's a melodic, rhythmic cycle. It's not sectional like our music, AABB or something like that, but it's just a cycle. It goes around and around. And that this single row Zydeco music, like Zydeco Force, if you want to hear a great Zydeco band, they play single rows and they just play a riff, and it's exactly like an African.
That's cool. It's almost trance-like. It's
yeah,
very,
it is.
just keeps on going, and the rhythm gets you.
Yeah.
Just,
So African music has that cycle, and then things build on top of it, exactly like this form of Zydeco music, and it's definitely a black tradition. We were in my wife Shannon and I were down for Mardi Gras a few years ago, and we went to Mamou, and I have to say I was a little shocked by this.
I know what you're gonna say.
Do you? I mean, one end of the street was white and
Yep.
Cajun music, and one end of the street was black and Zydeco music. And it's not like people, we went to the Zydeco side.
That's where I go.
Yeah, we went there and we danced, and it was totally cool, and people were, there was totally open, but it still was a little.
Yeah, it's I don't know who knows how to describe it, but I guess people stick with their own for one thing. That part of Louisiana is definitely historically not the best in race relations, where it's a very, for one, that's the poorest parish in America at some points recently, Ville Platte and Mamou, and both white and black, but then there's white flight, and then, but yeah, you have the white Cajun band on one side, you have the black Zydeco band on the other side, and
They're separate traditions.
it's pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
But they come from from Amadou Ardoin, Dennis McGee.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting, and that it's two branches of the same tree, but now the Cajun music has stayed more traditional in French with instrumentation and keep tradition for tradition's sake, and Zydeco has evolved leaps and bounds, though it's mostly not in French now.
No.
It's more always modernizing and always, but they're the ones getting 1,000 people come and watch, where the Cajun bands are struggling to get people out because they're so focused on tradition and not modernizing for the young people. So that's where we come in. I think it's just doing what we like and not worry. I love traditional music. That's why I do it. But at the same time, I also love modern music. So we bring the modern music in while keeping it traditional. And one of the new young upcoming female accordion players, called us the Cajun gateway drug.
That's good, I guess.
And now she's just pumping the traditional music like in this new raw way, because she fell in love with it at one of our shows. Not to brag, but just to say that's if we were just sitting there, we have to play traditional music, we might not have got her attention. Mm-hmm. We are playing traditional music, but we're bringing what we like is of modern music.
Which has always been the case, right?
Exactly.
That's the progression.
That's what this whole talk's been about. Definitely, exactly.
Yeah. And I will say this as an accordion player that I was playing Zydeco for a while. I hate to say this, but I find Cajun accordion just more interesting. I mean, there's more interesting.
Interesting, yeah.
And there's more to
Zydeco's
it.
more repetitious, and Cajun
Yeah.
can have more.
Well, all the
more
ornamentation, and
Yeah.
it's really for such a simple instrument. In fact, I used to say this: the simpler the instrument, the more complicated it is to make good music
Definitely.
on it. Starting with musical bows. I mean, you can make really good music on musical bows. It's just one string on a bow. And Cajun accordions are real simple, but to play them, to do what Cajun people do, it's mind-boggling. I've been doing it for years and years, and I'm still struggling.
I was going to ask you a question about, so you've got the kind of more like...
Can you say it real loud so folks in
Okay,
back in the...
the kind of stuff that the Lomaxes were reporting in the 30s or whatever in Louisiana, a lot of like French ballads that to be traced back to Old World, and then you got Waterloo at the same time when you got Je pas quand Villebreau playing as what he recognizes Cajun music. whereas that kind of balladry uh, doesn't doesn't strike us as Cajun. Well, the way we know it today. But I'm wondering, if there like a missing link in between those two?
It's a great question. What I would say is that the Lomaxes intentionally stayed away from commercial music.
Yeah, they did.
They didn't record the Bros. They didn't record like Cleoma's brother, Amadei Bro, who was at the same time as Amadei Ardoin. To me, they're like the two icons of accordion. And they stayed away from commercial music and wanted to get house music. And that's the same thing about tradition. Like, house music and ballads aren't popular and exciting enough to stay relevant. So it's amazing that they did catch them because, you know, of course, I'm sure, as in your studies, that what has kept those, you know, I guess I'm trying to say that before the radio and before recorded music and stuff, when people would do more music, I guess at the house each evening and stuff, or,
Yeah.
you know, so there's that cycle and that legacy of people have learned from their ancestors certain little songs and stuff. And you can still do that. And that's the cool thing, is finding modern versions of that. Like, oh, well, I know this little song about, you know, it's how to remember a certain thing, or it's what you say when you, you know, when you're kind of getting superstitious about something, or, you know, and so that there's those little things as opposed to, you know, Keith Frank's new hit that everyone's hearing. So yeah, it's like commercial versus, what would you call it? Like just more that's folk, or, you know.
I call it house music.
Yeah, house music. So
Yeah.
Specifically,
I mean, well,
how open like a bopper the sound and you identify taking you get started there, no?
yeah, around the turn of the 20th century, in the way we know it now. That's what I was trying to say. That this is Marc Savoy's theory, and I'm gonna go try to find this out, because there's certain things about it that don't quite make sense to me. But he says that what I said earlier, which the accordions that play with fiddles easily are now imported around the turn of around 1900, and so from 1900 to World War II, that's the era where you get this, and you get the guitar, accordion, fiddle, triangle, the folk kind of gloss on what Cajun music is. Now the truth is, there were always things other than that then too, and that still goes on now in people's houses. So you've got, we tell histories in too unilinear a fashion. There's always lots of stuff going on in parallel fashion in different places. So you talk about your family. So you guys were doing that.
Yeah, my family learned, the standards and wrote their own, but I've had my own. Like, I recorded a lady. She was kind of my mentor, Ethel May Bork, and she sang all these songs. That one of them she wrote for her dad as pain medication on his deathbed, like just to kind of keep his mind off. A song about their life, and then she added on to her life, and then some things she heard, and so she was singing a cappella, so it could be seen as, oh, well, this is old ballad music, but she might have got off the radio, she might have got it off of minstrel vaudeville, so you never know what the source of some of this, and that's the Lomax stuff. And interesting is the Blanico Gaspard. That's a very diverse collection where it's like, oh, it's traditional, but the ethnomusicologists, oh, this actually came from this Scotch-Irish thing, this came from a vaudeville thing, this came from like a jazz, so you never know where they're coming from, but that's the beauty and interesting complexity of it, I think.
Yeah, so I mean, if you think about it, I don't know how many of you all saw Song Catcher or those movies about song collecting in the Appalachian region. A lot of those folks who were doing the collecting didn't want to record banjo and fiddle music. They wanted to record ballads because they went back to Great Britain and so on and so forth. So there's a similar head here. I mean, think about the Lomaxes. They wanted purity, and they wanted isolation. So why they went to the prisons?
Man,
you can't get much more isolated than that.
The Jure stuff is amazing on that. The from Generette and all that. The ring.
Yeah.
So cool. Just people clapping and stomping and saying, that's such good stuff.
Yeah.
And
But
that's
but
the
they
first.
want they don't they the whole folk thing at the earlier time, it's no longer the case. And in fact, Alan Lomax before he died changed. But you early on, folklorists didn't want you to be using these commercial hillbilly records or commercial Cajun records. You had to go to the pure people. But as Louis just said, it was always mixed up anyway. I mean, so yeah.
About time for you to go sit.
Yeah, probably is. You got to go.
Yeah, we're starting.
Thanks
our
so
gig
much
soon.
for coming.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you so much, Tom. Also,
Ladies and gentlemen, keep making some noise for Louis Michot and Tom Turino.
thank you, man. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Be sure to make your way down to the Green Lantern here this evening in just a little bit. And if you can't make it to that, go on down to Tall Sound tomorrow. Gates are at 5. Again, that's TAHLSOUND.com if you want to check it out. Thank you both again. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, make some noise for he has to get that sound check. Thank you, gentlemen.